Hello and welcome back to the Not the Old Firm YouTube channel. My name is Ben Banks, here with an exclusive interview for the Saturday ahead of the Scottish Cup ties. Bit of an interesting one. I don't think you get many stories like this. Lee Clark is our exclusive interview on the channel today. There's a written piece as well, which can be read online on our website. There's also a couple of bits and bobs across our social media feeds. He's out in Sudan with Al-Merrikh. I think I've pronounced that right. If MD's watching this from the Red Devils of Sudan, do let me know. But he's out there managing just now, completely brand new challenge for him. It's a massive club, 43,000 full house when fans are allowed back in competing in the Champions League out in Africa, and they're one of the biggest teams on that continent. He's got the chance to manage them, and he also talks a bit about his time with Kilmarnock. He spent a year, 365 days exactly, between the 15th of February 2016 and 2017 at Rugby Park. So he speaks to NTOF about that and his new journey in Sudan. So we hope you do enjoy. Do remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And until next time, take it easy. For taking the time to do it. No, you've done a couple of these, but I can imagine when you're getting back into management and things like that, that a move to Sudan probably wasn't in your mind, but it's came about, and you sort of just explain how you've managed to end up in football domestic management in Africa.
Yeah, well, you're saying, Sudan, and you're probably right in terms of the country or whatever, but I was, looking overseas. It's always been something I've wanted to do since I started coaching. It was always in my plan. I had an opportunity a couple of years ago in Europe, but my father's ill health, didn't allow us to do that. I didn't want to be overseas while he wasn't very well, and I couldn't get back across very quickly. So decided I couldn't take that opportunity that was given to us then. And then this one came up, and I looked at the club. I looked at what it was about, compete in the Champions League when the COVID restrictions are away. 43,000 full house, very, very passionate. Support, one of the biggest clubs in Africa, in the top 4 or 5. So I thought, why not? Obviously, different experience, different culture, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
How long have you been out there with COVID and stuff? Have you been out there a few weeks now, or?
I think it's about 3 weeks, approaching 4 weeks now, yeah, possibly. We've had 2 league games, which we won. We're 3 points behind our rivals, Hilal, with a game in hand. So it'll probably be between us two to, battle it out for the championship. And obviously had a Champions League game that started in controversy and, ended up leaving a little bit of a bitter taste in my mouth.
Can you sort of, for anybody, obviously, I think when you say the Champions League and stuff, we're obviously not talking about PSG or Bayern Munich or that. We're talking about the sort of African equivalent to that and that sort of side of the world. So when you sort of give an insight into sort of what happened in that match and who you were playing and things like that.
Well, I think you've got to just be open-minded, and it was very similar when I went up to Scotland. People down in England thought the Scottish game and were quite derogatory about it. And, when I got up there, I found that was totally wrong and it was short-sighted. And when you talk about the African Champions League here, you've got to realise, we're playing Al Ahly on Saturday, the Egyptian champions who've won this African Champions League 9 times. And they're as big and as worldwide known as an organisation as any of the big European powerhouses. They get 80,000 alone for an Egyptian league game. So, and they're, covered by millions and millions of fans worldwide. And so, it's still a massive competition for this continent. It's very, of course, the more well-known teams are in the European version of it. But in our last game in Simba Sporting Club, which is in Tanzania, we before we flew out, on the Saturday, we had COVID tests on the Thursday. Everybody, playing staff and technical staff, all were negative. We played a league game on the Friday, which we won. Then we flew out to Tanzania on the Saturday. On the Sunday, we were meant to be met by the CAF organisation, which is equivalent to UEFA over here in Africa, to organise the COVID tests in the country where we're playing, which is one of the rules and regulations when you're playing in the Champions League, that you have to get a test in wherever you're playing. So, and that's meant to be done in the hotel. That wasn't done. When we had to go into a local hospital, which took the whole group about 5-6 hours to do. So that wasn't ideal. And then 3 hours before kick-off, I was told that 8 of my players had COVID-19 and tested positive, and 6 of those were in the starting 11. The other 2 were very experienced players who would make a contribution in the game from the bench because of their experience. Another link to the story is the coach of Simba, our opponents, was a coach at this club only a couple of months ago, so he knew all the best players in the squad, and unbelievably all the best players in the group were the ones who tested positive for COVID. So I had to change basically 8 players, and end up having to put players in false positions, players who had only had a couple of training sessions, players just coming back from injury. I mean, for example, my back 4, my right back was a right winger. One centre back was, or both centre backs were centre midfield players, and one was had only had 3 training sessions after recovering from an injury. So, we haven't put square pegs in round holes because of the lack of numbers. And the change was so late in the day. So after the game, after we'd lost, the day after, we flew out of Tanzania, but those 8 players had to stay. And then they had another COVID test, which unbelievably all 8 were negative again. So out of 3 tests, 2 were negative, but the one we couldn't change it because it didn't give us enough time with only 3 hours to kick off to have a retest, was positive. And so make of that what you will.
Yeah, I'm hoping nobody from the African Football Authorities watches this or that and alleges this channel of conspiracy theories or that. It's all.
Well, no, I meant, and I didn't mention anything in
no.
But I mentioned it in my press conference after the game. I said it was basically sabotage, and we knew. I knew even when the game finished, before the lads had retested, that they would be negative again. Because with 2 days earlier, they had no symptoms. They were flying. There was nothing, and why it had waited so long. The process of us doing the COVID testing, the process of us only getting the results back 3 hours before the game, so there was no chance of a retest. For example, we're playing Al Ali, and that we've already organised that they get tested at the hotel, and they use the specific lab in Sudan and here in Khartoum, and they'll have their results back. So they've landed here tonight and they've had the COVID tests, and they'll have their results back tomorrow evening. So if there's any issues with positive tests, they can get a retest done before the game. So there'll not be any issues there. So the only way they'll miss any players will be because if the players fail 2 tests.
Good stuff, right? Well, hopefully your COVID there's no any other sabotage or anything like that, and hope all goes well with it. Have you been surprised? Because I think over here, obviously, I'm sure you're the same, probably don't watch a lot of football outside of Europe, maybe the MLS, maybe sort of Boca Juniors, River Plate. But I don't think because whenever I think of African football, I sort of think like Orlando Pirates and sort of some of the South African teams. I don't think people quite realise, like you're saying, the capacity crowds here, that you wouldn't look out of place in the Premier League. I think when people seen like your announcement, I think they maybe think, oh, he's going to some seaside league, farmers league. But it's very full on with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of fans over there.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's our rivals on Friday. They play a big South African club. So, there's people who know the football worldwide. And I've got to say, I've watched some of it, but I didn't know all the teams until you get here and you start finding out. You start finding out about the passion of the supporters and the ferocity of the supporters. I mean, I was at the Sudan national team game at the weekend when they beat South Africa to qualify for the African Nations Cup for the first time in over a decade. And obviously there was no fans allowed. But when we come out the stadium after the game, it just seemed that everyone from Khartoum had congregated around the Al Hilal Stadium. So there's absolutely thousands, music being played, singing, chanting. So unbelievable scenes, and it gives the country a real positive impact. And hopefully our two clubs, mine on Saturday and Hilal Friday, can get two positive results in the Champions League.
I'm assuming it's a bit out your comfort zone, this.
What, the country, the experience?
I suppose the full thing, really, because it is, it is so different. Well, a good experience, it is obviously very different, because just doing research and things like that, obviously I think it was sort of Bury and Blythe Spartans you were at management-wise. After.
Yeah, well, the Blythe one was always a difficult one for me because it wasn't full-time football. It was part-time. It was once a week training, if that's it, I couldn't get my head around that, to be honest with you. That was a completely wrong decision from me. To go into that level of football, I didn't know the standard. I didn't know the players I was coming up against. I didn't know the type of players I needed. That one just basically, you put it down to a little bit of experience. I didn't even get any really time to enjoy the coaching side of it because I very rarely got it. This has been completely different. You're full time, you're back on the grass, you're working with players. We've been in a camp now for 11 days together. That's the squad and the technical staff in a hotel preparing for the Ali game. We'll stay here till we then fly to Congo for our last Champions League game a week on Friday. We end up spending nearly a month together. You're constantly training twice a day most of the time, and you're getting a real camaraderie together. So this is like being back in the big time. And obviously with the Champions League stuff, some of the stadiums that you can go to are magnificent arenas around the continent. And also, if COVID-19 wasn't in, they'd be bouncing 50,000 at once at Simba, 80,000 at Al Ahly, obviously, and 40,000 at Vita Club in Congo. So, and obviously ourselves, 43,000 pack in every game. And anyway, so into the Red Castle, as it's nicknamed.
Oh, that sounds quite daunting. That actually, you don't really get nicknames like that here anywhere. But. Is your family and stuff over with you, or are you just over there yourself?
No, listen, my family, my children are growing up. They've got their own careers to look after. My wife's done the travelling bit with the players as a player. I've got myself over here. I'm totally throwing myself into the job and focused on what I've got to do. They're back in the UK, and that's the only downside. Been a long time since I've seen them. But with modern technology, we can speak regular, and in the season finishes in July and then restarts in November. So there's a bit of time then between the two seasons for me to spend a bit of time at home.
Also looking back, and great career. Newcastle, Sunderland, your brief spell at Kilmarnock. You're speaking about sort of when you came down to Scotland a wee bit earlier. Were you surprised by the sort of standard and the sort of? I know you've obviously played for bigger clubs than Kilmarnock, but it's still a fairly big size club here.
It's a great size club. I was blown away by it, and I shouldn't have left in hindsight. When I did, I was building some positive steps after coming into the club in a real tough position. I had a close relationship with Billy Bowie, and he was always saying that if he took control, there would be obviously extra funds available to strengthen the squad and the infrastructure of the club and his plans, and they were exciting. But the opportunity came to go back down south, and I thought if I could be successful at Bury in League One, I could then get opportunities higher up the ladder and eventually get to the Premier League where I wanted to work. But that wasn't the case, and so in hindsight it was the wrong move. I loved it at Kilmarnock. The people inside the club were brilliant, the supporters were superb, facilities were terrific. You know, Rugby Park it's a great stadium. So yeah, and loved where I lived up there. So not a brilliant time. And as I said earlier, you know, people you know, were a little bit, when you think about some of the things that was being said by people before, you know, they'd seen it or they'd seen the impact. Now it's the end thing, because Stephen Gerrard's come up and been really successful at Rangers, and it's give it a little bit more profile. So you're getting big names linked with it, with different jobs now. And, you know, I think Thierry Henry's the latest one to be linked with the Celtic job. And they're just massive clubs, massive. They, you know, they would enhance any league in the world, and their support and the organisation of both clubs, how big they are, that, you know, the fans they have all over the world is very special. So that was a great, when I was up in Scotland, to be managing against those clubs and go to those fantastic stadiums. It was brilliant. So there was nothing, there was no drawbacks to me time in Scotland. I really enjoyed it.
It was obviously quite you came into it wasn't great circumstances in terms of the league, and I can actually mind sort of being in sort of my sickbed watching you sort of blow Falkirk away in that playoff final. It looked like a team that shouldn't have been there in that game. Now I know Falkirk didn't turn up particularly well that day, but at the same time, like, pretty convincing stuff for you guys.
We didn't allow Falkirk to turn up that day. We were just, from the first whistle, we just went for the jugular basically, and we had a lot of pace and power at the front end of the pitch with McGuinness and Adejayi. So, and we had Greg Kilty, who, you know, unfortunately for him, if he's picked up some long-term injuries, because I believed he could have been, and still can be, a terrific player. He was certainly really good for me in that number 10 role. And we had Chris's experience. Chris Boyd is our focal point, as our striker. So yeah, we absolutely blew them away. No, it was difficult because the team were when I went in, it was in mid-February, and the team were on a losing run. The squad wasn't particularly fit. It wasn't particularly motivated. But we couldn't really do anything because the transfer window was shut. So we had to get those players together and give us the best opportunity to stay in the league. And you know, we flirted with being bottom for a while, and then obviously we pulled away, and Dundee United just couldn't get a result. And then obviously when it was after the split, and we knew really that we were going to be in in the playoff. You know, the last couple of games was a little bit of experimentation from myself, and that paid off, because in that little period I gave Greg Taylor an opportunity, and he ended up playing in the playoff games and was sensational. And as they say, for him, the rest is history. He's become a full international. He's playing for Celtic, and so, you know, that would prove to be the right thing for me to do, because it allowed me to see Greg in first team football. I had no hesitation in playing him in those two big games. I knew he had the ability and the mentality, and he proved us right.
Because I think, you see, when you're speaking about that, I did bits in the way they released a statement. Obviously, they've sold them for, I think it was the best part of $3 and a bit million. They said pretty much that transfers helped them through the pandemic. So while you could probably look at that, I think a couple of clubs are in a similar boat, as like if it had happened out with a pandemic, they could have probably used it to build a better squad and things like that. But I mean, technically, it must be nice for you. The guy you've gave a chance has pretty much helped. I don't want to go as far as say survive, but definitely helped them through the pandemic. Yeah,
of course. And you know, I brought Jordan Jones in for free as well, and then he got his big move to Rangers. So, you know, I don't know if there was any money changed hands in terms of transfer fee for that. But you know, there was in all walks of life, there was some successes and there was some that weren't successful. You know, I had to bring that many players in the second season to try and turn around the fortunes of the club and the mentality. And we did that. Obviously, there was a lot of loans in that as well. And I think the loan signings have proved since then as well that they were top players. Obviously, some of them ruffled a few feathers, especially the Freddie Woodman one, because we had Jamie MacDonald, who had been in Scotland for a long time. But it doesn't matter what the situation is. If you get an opportunity to bring someone into your football club and make your team better, you should never turn it down, no matter what the situation is going to be with the player who may be outgoing. And Freddie Woodman was a World Cup under-20 winner. He's went on and he's playing fantastically well for Swansea. He's highly sought after by many Premier League clubs. And he improved the goalkeeping department as well as did, Christopher Asia and Sean Longstaff are, instrumental in the midfield. So we done some great loan deals as well.
Okay, I was going to say, like, if you'd have said, because obviously everybody knows, like, Sean Longstaff, I think 50 million or some. I know that's probably paper talk, but some crazy figures were getting punted about with him last season. But if you think during that season, like Sean Longstaff, Freddie Woodman, Christopher Ayer, Greg Taylor, all playing for Kilmarnock, like, bonkers. That's probably more than 100 million worth of talent, maybe, or just about that. The way,
well, you could be pushing that sort of figure, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, so we got, as I said, we had quite a high success rate. We did have one or two who didn't produce, but that's always going to be the case. You're not going to get 100% of your signings right, especially the market we were in. Free transfers, etc. Look at Suleiman Koulibaly. We signed him on a free, and we sold him 6 months later for close on £1 million to Egypt. So, there's lots of positives from the signings that were brought in.
Has he been giving you a phone then since you've been on the Egyptian telly and things? I know he's not over there.
Yeah, I think he's public enemy number one in Egypt, I think, isn't he?
I was going to say, I don't think he'll be the one to give you advice. I think he'll be telling you to stay away from the place. But no, obviously, you left exactly a year to the day you arrived, and they're sort of in a similar-ish position that Tommy Wright's found himself in. He's coming in to sort of try and keep them up. They're decent result against Mull as we record this, and they play in the Scottish Cup this weekend, but they should have enough quality to stay up. But I'm sure you said that when you came in as well, that this side should be enough to keep us out of the playoffs at least.
I think this squad's far superior to the one I inherited. I think the result against Motherwell will give them so much confidence. I think having Tommy as the manager, who I know very well, played teammate of mine at Newcastle, also a colleague when I was assistant manager at Norwich, and Tommy was goalkeeping coach, and Paul Stevenson was first team coach. And obviously I brought Paul up to Kilmarnock when I was there. So there's a strong allegiance between us all. And Kilmarnock, for me, couldn't have picked a better manager. He a couple of times he'd been in that position with St Johnstone and got them out of it. But also with St Johnstone, he built teams that become successful, won a cup, always regularly had them in Europe and in the top six. And I think that's what he'll do. I think he'll get the results during the split. That'll make them not even having to worry about the playoffs, never mind the relegation spot. I think that result against Motherwell will give all the players a huge lift. Because, I think with the exception of Ross County, Tommy had been really pleased with the performances. They just weren't getting the results. But now they've got the result to go with the performance. And if they've had a bit of a break and get some work into them, I think, without trying to sound too arrogant about it, I think they're going to be fine. And then I think you'll see the club go from strength to strength, because I think Tommy will use all his experience of the Scottish game in terms of recruitment and knowledge of what it takes to get a team in the top six and stay there and possibly in European positions. And I think you could be looking forward to some exciting times.
Brilliant stuff. I think thanks again for your time and stuff. But just before I hit switch off the recording, what are your sort of aims and ambitions for the rest of this season? Is it as much trying to, although you'll be wanting success on the park and things, that is as much as well for you just trying to settle into this completely new life you've been thrown into?
I think that's already happened. I'm loving it. I'm back on the grass, as I said, coaching, which I love. I've got a passion for football. obviously the domestic aim is to win the league, and then obviously it's tough with the African Champions League with the start that I had before I came in. They only had the 1 point from 4 games, so we've got 2 difficult games left. But let's see if we can win them and see what can happen. And then we've got the Arab Champions League to compete in as well. So there's lots of challenges ahead. There's lots of potential exciting things to happen. So we're looking forward to that, and we're positive.